Hello everyone, welcome to your first lecture on Android. Before starting with Android, we'll be learning the fundamentals of Java. First of all, let's understand why should we learn Java. Android uses Java as its development platform for all its applications. More than 70% of all Android development is done using the Java language. There are other programming languages which are also used for development of Android applications, but most of the application development is done using the Java language only. Also, Java is the most widely used platform for development of desktop and web applications. You might have heard of something called as J2SE or J2EE. J2SE is used for the desktop part and J2EE is used for the web part. Apart from this, Java also helps us to learn the basics of object-oriented programming in a much more structured manner. So let's begin with Java. First of all, let's understand the basics of Java. Java is a purely object-oriented programming language. That is, in Java, everything is in terms of objects. So first of all, let's understand what is these objects and how do they work. Java stands on four basic pillars. The first pillar is called as classes and objects. Second pillar is called as encapsulation. Third pillar is called as inheritance. And fourth pillar is called as polymorphism. We'll be covering each of these steps in a much more in-depth manner in the slides to come. So first of all, let's understand the concept of classes. Classes are nothing but blueprints of a system, and the actual realizations of those blueprints are objects. For example, if I tell ball will be a class. We cannot say that this is a ball, that is a ball, but ball is a blueprint that comes into our mind. Now, if we are imagining a green ball with a plastic material and of say 2 centimeter radius, so that green, the plastic material and the 2 centimeter radius are the properties of these class. So if we create such a ball, that ball is called as an object of the class ball. So let's reiterate that again. We had a class ball. The class ball had three properties. First property was its color. Second property was the material of the ball. And the third property was the radius of the ball. If we have all the three properties together, then this is called as a blueprint or a class. Objects, on the other hand, are called as the actual realizations of this class. For example, if I say I have a green ball with a plastic material and a 2 centimeter radius, then this is an object of the class ball. For example, if we have a student system, then the blueprint can be name, roll number, address, contact number and branch. This does not specify a specific student, but this says that a student can have these 5 properties, that is name, roll number, address, contact number and branch. Out of these 5 properties, name, address, contact number and branch are strings, whereas roll number is an integer. So to define a new class called as student, we'll be creating a file called as student.java and defining the properties in a way like this. We'll be saying class student, class space student. This indicates that we are defining a class. Inside this class we have string name, that is we have the name variable of type string. String is nothing but a series of characters. If the name is Ajay, then the series of characters are AJAY, so name is a string. Then we have integer roll number. int indicates integer. Integer indicates that it can hold a value of -3 to 768, 3 to 767. Then we have string address, string contact number, and string branch. This creates the blueprint of a student, that is, a class has been created, a class which doesn't point to a specific student, but it says that a student can have these 5 properties. Now let's go to the depth about objects. Objects are nothing but actual realization of a class. To create an object of the student class, we have to say student space S1, where S1 is an object of the student class. Objects will expose the variables defined in the class to the programmer. So if a programmer wants to access the variables like name, roll number, address, branch, etc., he'll be able to do that with the help of objects. So let's say if I want to create one more object for a person named as Ajay, let's create one more class called as test.java. We'll give the file name as test, and we'll have the class definition as class test, and all the coding in Java is done inside a function called as the main function. As in C we had the main function, similarly in Java we have a main function. To define the main function, we have to say public static void main and string args. These args are the command line arguments that you can pass to the code. We have defined student S1 equals to new student. This is the syntax of defining a new object. Here S1 is an object of the student class. The new keyword indicates that I want to create a new object, or I want to allocate some memory for this new object. So whenever I say student S1 equals to new student, S1 is an object of the student class. The new keyword indicates that we want to allocate some memory for this object S1. Once we have got the object S1, then we can fill in the properties of this object. Let's say S1.name equals to Ajay Godse. Now we are putting this thing in double quotes. So it is S1.name equals to Ajay Godse in double quotes, as Ajay Godse is a string. Then we have S1.roll number equals to 10. 10 being an integer will not come in double quotes, it will come directly. Then we have S1.address equals to Sadar Nagpur. To give basic output with Java, we have to use the syntax like system.out.println. The meaning of system.out.println is system indicates your computer system, dot indicates inside the computer system, out indicates the output device. The output device in our case is the screen. So we have system.out, that is the output device. Inside this output device dot println means you print this complete statement and give a new line. So we have system, that is our system. Inside this system we have the output screen. Inside this output screen we want to print something. What we want to print is my name is plus. Now we want to concatenate two strings, so we'll use a plus sign. My name is plus S1.name. So S1 is what? S1 is an object of the student class. Inside the student class object, I want to access the name property. So I'll say S1.name. So it will return me Ajay Godse plus in double quotes I live at. This will be a string plus S1.address. So what will S1.address give me? You're right, it will give me Sadar Nagpur. So the output of this program should be my name is Ajay Godse. I live at Sadar Nagpur. Let's try to do this thing. So let's do it for the first program of Java. Before starting with the first program, we have to understand how do we start with Eclipse. Whenever you will start Eclipse for the first time, at that time you might see a window like this: workspace unavailable, workspace in use or cannot be created, choose a different one. What is a workspace? A workspace is basically a folder on your computer in which all your projects will be stored. In our case, let's press OK over here and let's say C drive / Let's press OK on this. Now what Eclipse will do is, Eclipse will start with this folder and it will give you a brief window. Inside this window you have three parts. This left part is the part where all your projects come into picture. This central part is the part where you develop your projects, and this bottom part is the part where you see your output. You can close this outline for now. So let's start with our first project of Java. To create a project, go to File and say New Java Project. It will open a window. Inside this window you have to give the project name. Let's give the project name as First Java Project. Make sure that you have given the project name as First Java Project. We have to choose an execution environment. Let's choose it as Java SE 1.6. Why Java SE 1.6? Because whenever you will be developing for Java, you have to choose a particular version of Java. In this case it is Java 1.6. You can click on Finish safely. As you click on Finish, a project is created in your project area with the name First Java Project. Just maximize this. You have the src folder. Src indicates source. All your Java code files are inside the src folder. We have to create a Java file with the name student.java. Remember that? So let's create that file. To create the file, right click on src, say New Class. Give the class name as student and press Finish. As you can see, it has created the file student.java and it has written the syntax public class student for me. What I want in the student classes, I want 5 fields. First one is name, so I'll say string name. Second one is roll number, so I'll say int roll number. Third one is branch, so I'll say string branch. Then we have contact, so I'll say string contact, and I'll say string other information. So now a student has all these 5 fields: name, roll number, branch, contact, and other information. Now let's test this class by creating a test class. Make it a point that whenever you create a new class, you have to test that class. To test a class, we'll right click on the source folder and say New Class. Give the class name as test, T-E-S-T, and press Finish. This will create a new class test. To write a test program, we have to have a main function. The main function is the launching point of the program. As you can see, in the student class we do not have a main function. That means we can create an object of the student class, but we cannot run the student class. To run a class, you must have a main function inside it. The following syntax must be used to create a main function. It should be public static void main string args. Now don't worry about the meaning of these words public static void main, but understand that we have to just create a main function that does not return anything. That's why we say void, and a main function which contains a series of arguments. These arguments are nothing but command line arguments that we can pass to a program. In our case, we do not require any command line arguments. We just have to create a student. So let's create a student S1. This indicates that S1 is an object of type student class. Now I have to create a new object, so I'll say S1 equals to new student. Once you are done with this, then Eclipse will rightly point out that S1 is an object of the type student. What we have to do is we have to fill in some properties of the class student in the object S1. So let's access the S1 object by saying S1 dot. Now as you can see that as you pressed S1 dot, it gave you a complete list of options that you can choose. I want to fill the name, so I'll say S1 dot name equals to Ajay Godse. I want to fill in the age of Ajay, so I'll say s1.age equals to 25. Make it a point that in the, oh sorry, there's no age, there's roll number most probably. Yeah, it's fine. Make it a point that in S1, name was a string, so we kept it as double quotes, whereas roll number is an integer, so there are no double quotes. Okay, let's move along. S1 dot, I have branch. Let's keep the branch of Ajay as electronics, and let's say S1 dot contact, or keep the contact of Ajay as a simple number, and let's say S1 dot other information is plays cricket. Okay, now you have filled all the properties of the student S1. Here, student is the class, that is the blueprint, whereas S1 is the object of that class. S1 points to a specific student, while student is a generic type. Okay, why generic? Because it doesn't specify a specific object, it just says that it is a blueprint of type student. What we want now is we want to print out all the details of the student object S1. So I can say system, that means a system. Inside this system I want the output device, and inside this output device I want to print something out. So I'll say system.out.println. I want to print out my name is, then I'll say a plus sign. A plus indicates to concatenate two strings. Then I'll say s1 dot name plus I, my branch is, I'll say s1 dot branch, then my roll number is, I'll say s1 dot roll number. It is not mandatory to access all the fields, it is just for your demonstration purposes that we have accessed three fields: s1.name, s1.branch, s1.roll number. In your case, what you can do is you can access all the fields. Now we will run this code and see the output. As we saw earlier, Eclipse window has three parts. The left part is the project part, central part is the development part, and the bottom part is the output part. We have created the project, we have developed the code. Now we'll see the output over here. First of all, understand that student is a class, but it is not an executable class because it doesn't contain the main method, whereas test is also a class, but it is a executable class because it contains the main method. To execute this class test, right click on test and say run as Java application. It will give you the output. My name is Ajay Ghodse, my branch is electronics, my roll number is 25. This my name is was a string which came from here. Then we had a space bar, so space bar came as well. Then we have s1.name, that was Ajay Ghodse, this was picked up from here. Then we had my branch is s1.branch, that was electronics, and my roll number is s1.roll number. Now if you also try to print out the other properties, so I can say system.out.println. Now this big syntax system.out.println has a short form as well. Let me show that to you in a quick while. If you want to write system.out.println, you just write syso and press Control space. Okay, let me do it again. I'll say syso and press Control space. It will give the complete system.out.println. This is a shorthand or IntelliSense in Eclipse. You just press the short form, it will give you the long form of it. And I'll then say I can be contacted at plus s1 dot contact plus I have a hobby which is, and I'll say s1 dot other information. Let me change the hobby to from plays cricket to playing cricket, so it gives the correct grammatical output. Let's right click on test and say run as Java application. I hope we are clear. My name is Ajay Godse. My branch is electronics. My roll number is 25. I can be contacted at the phone number. I have a hobby which is playing cricket. Now, one thing to note over here is the first line came as it is. Then you had a new line. Why this new line came? Because you wrote system.out.println. This indicates that print this line and leave a blank line. Okay, similarly, if you will remove this system.out.println to system.out.print, it will say that just print this line but do not leave a blank line. So the output will look something like this. Hope you appreciate it. This complete line came as it is and this output followed. Okay, and println will actually print the output in a new line. Let's move on to the new concept of encapsulation. Encapsulation means hiding some information in our class from the developer. So assume that there is some internal information to a class which you want that it should remain inside the class and it should not be able to access outside the class. For example, if you have a big derivation of 7 steps, and in those 7 steps the first step takes the input and the 7th step gives the output, the remaining 5 steps are hidden to the class. That is, they are the class implementation. You do not want the user to see those steps. For example, if you have a derivation like where you have A and B as the inputs and D as the output, and you have a variable C which is C equals to A plus B, D equals to A into C. Now you want the user to only have a look at A, B and D but not C. So this C will be an encapsulated variable for the class. Encapsulated variables are hidden inside the class, and if you try to access these variables outside the class, you will not be able to do this. Now, the following encapsulations are most widely used. First encapsulation is called as public, means you can show this thing to anyone. For example, in our previous slides we had public string name. So name was a public variable that can be accessed anywhere. Second is called as private. Private indicates this variable is for your class only and this variable should not be exposed outside. So whenever you will define something as private, that will remain inside the class only and no one will be able to access that thing outside. Suppose we want the student's ID to be kept private within the class. So we need to add another field inside the student class as private int ID. That indicates that we have a private integer ID which is internal to the class and we cannot access that variable outside the class. And if we try to access this ID from the test.java class which we made earlier, we'll be getting an error and we will not be able to do the same. So let's try to do it. In the encapsulation part, we have to first understand that all the arguments that we had in the student class were all public. Why public? Because by default Java keeps all the arguments as public. Suppose we want to define a private variable over here, so I can do it by saying private int ID. Now this indicates that ID is a private variable of the student class, or it is encapsulated inside the student class, and you will not be able to access ID outside the class. So if we try to access ID inside our test class, so we'll not be able to do it. Let's see if we'll say s1.id equals to 5. As you can see, it gives a red mark over here, a red mark over here, a red mark over here, and a red mark over here, indicating that there is some problem with your code. First of all, let's understand what that problem is. To understand a problem, just take your mouse on that error. It will give you the possible solutions of that. It says that the field student.id is not visible. Why it is not visible? Because the id field has been kept as private. So this field id is not visible outside the class. Second thing, it says that you can change the visibility of id to default, but we don't want to do that because we had to test the encapsulation part and we have correctly did so. And this tells that you have no errors. So the main purpose of this program is to show you if you have a private variable inside your class, you will not be able to access that variable outside the class. Okay.